Hey guys, welcome back to Gatsu Gaming. Today we're talking about Brewmaster Monk, something that I've actually played quite a bit on live. I actually ran it as the tank of choice for actually two of the raid tiers in Legion, so something I definitely wanted to look at again to see if maybe I want to tank on the Monk at some point in BFA. One thing I'll say before I go ahead and take a look at it here and give you my general impressions is that it is an absolutely excellent tank. Probably one of the most well-rounded, actually, out of all of them. So taking a quick peek at talents here. Again, ignore PvP talents because I don't PvP. So we have first Eye of the Tiger. This is still here left over from Legion, and I believe actually from Warlords too. Hell, maybe even Miss now that I think about it. Anyway, Tiger Palm also applies Eye of the Tiger, dealing 632 nature damage to the enemy and 632 healing to the monk over 8 seconds. Very useful if you're going to be on one target the entire time and you would like that steady, consistent stream of both damage and healing. Alternatively, I've been using Chi Wave. Chi Wave has been my talent of choice most of the time. Chi Wave of energy flows through friends and foes, dealing nature damage or healing. Bounces up to 7 times to targets within 25 yards. In 5-mans, this actually does help heal quite a bit, surprisingly. And with your critical hit chance affecting your Celestial Fortune, Chi Wave can actually heal you for a ton if there's no one else within 25 yards. Super useful, does quite a bit of damage too. And lastly, the AoE King Chi Burst. It is a 40-yard range, 0.83 second cast. I believe this does scale with haste. If not, that's a really awkward cast time. 30-second cooldown. Essentially, you Kamehameha some Chi, and you deal a decent amount of nature damage to all enemies, and then you actually heal everyone, the monk, as well as all allies in the Chi Burst's path. Casting Chi Burst does not prevent avoiding attacks. Some people, of course, are very concerned with that because at one point I believe it did, so they wanted to make sure it's specified now that that does not. So this will not affect your chance to dodge or anything like that. So these are all excellent talents. They all have very specific applications to them, and I think we'll see a lot of use out of every single one of them here. Our level 30 row, this is actually just movement here. So we have Celerity, which reduces the cooldown on roll by 5 seconds and increases its maximum number of charges by 1. Very useful if you have a lot of movement you have to do, and you want to make sure you always have a roll available. Otherwise, the typical pick for me at least has been Chi Torpedo. I think at this point it's just because I'm so used to Chi Torpedo. It does travel a little bit further than a standard roll. And it also increases your movement speed by 30% for 10 seconds. It stacks up to 2 times. This has a max of 2 charges. Again, Chi Torpedo is the one that I typically take, although I will say that I see most people taking Tiger's Lust, which gives you a targeted 70% movement speed, which you can put on anyone else, or yourself if you need it. 70% speed buff for 6 seconds. It also removes all roots and snares. So anytime you're going to be running into a dungeon with, say, a bunch of spiders or something else, that may have a snare or some sort of a freeze in place, Tiger's Lust can actually save your teammates quite a bit. So if there's anything like that, definitely Tiger's Lust for sure. If not, Chi Torpedo is great for getting around. Our level 45 row is a Mitigation row. One of these talents is not like the others, though. So here we have Light Brewing. This reduces the cooldown of Iron Skin Brew and Purifying Brew by 3 seconds and increases their maximum number of charges by 1. If you're having issues managing your brews, either your haste is not high enough yet, or there's a fight where you really need those extra charges, I can't really think of any of those off the top of my head where this is a super useful talent. But if you are learning how to play the class, Light Brewing is pretty good training wheels wise. You'll never be without a charge of Iron Skin Brew when you need it. Spitfire is probably going to be the default choice for a lot of players, especially those that are going to be focusing more towards the DPS side of tanking. Spitfire is a passive that makes your Tiger Palm have a 25% chance to reset the cooldown of Breath of Fire. With the loss of the Legion Legendaries, which isn't really a loss, they're just phased out because it's a different expansion. We no longer have the chest piece, Simsalabim's Lost Tunic, that would reset the cooldown of Breath of Fire when you Keg Smash. So at the moment, Spitfire is definitely the best alternative. It's not as consistent, however, it does proc a lot more often than you would think. 25% chance is huge. So anytime you're going to be looking for those extra dodges, if you're pulling real big, Spitfire is probably the way to go. Now, whenever I was raid tanking, I always took Black Ox Brew, 2-minute cooldown. You chug some Black Ox Brew, it instantly refills your energy to full, gives you Iron Skin and Purifying Brew charges up to max as well. This is great for those shit moments where, maybe you made an error and you need to correct it, or whenever there's just a lot of heavy damage and you're going to have to spam Purifying Brew. I haven't run into any situations yet in beta where I'm going to need Black Ox Brew, but most people are very, very used to this talent at this point, and it's kind of a comfort pick for most people. Although I highly, highly recommend you try out Spitfire. Level 60 row, this is our CC / I don't know, there's a statue here too row. So we have Tiger Tail Sweep. It increases the range of your leg sweep by another 2 yards and reduces its cooldown by 10 seconds. This here is incredible in terms of CC. Having a shorter cooldown on your leg sweep is definitely very useful in Mythic Plus if you are the only AoE stun, which very well could be the case based on your comp. So if that's the case, you'll probably want to take Tiger Tail Sweep. Summon Black Ox Statue. This summons a Black Ox Statue at the target location for 15 minutes, pulsing threat to all enemies within 30 yards. You may cast Provoke on the statue to taunt all enemies near the statue. This is a really, really fun thing to have. Black Ox Statue, while you're leveling, essentially lets you go ahead and just drop it in the middle of a large group, gather absolutely everything, and then you can taunt and dismiss the statue so you don't end up with a ton of respawns later. Or maybe you do because you're AoE farming leather or something. Just quick FYI, the pig farm in Drustvar, totally a place to use this to farm leather, just saying. But this here is definitely great whenever you have ads are going to be spawning a decent bit away from you, or if you just, want to make sure you never miss anything. You can pull quite more than you would think with this, though. 30 yards is huge, so be careful if you choose this talent. Make sure you learn your range on it. Lastly here we have Ring of Peace. 40-yard range, instant, 45-second cooldown, drops your Ring of Peace at the target location for 5 seconds. Enemies that enter will be ejected from the ring. Super useful to knock things out of Sanguine whenever you're running Mythic Plus. Also really great on Necrotic Weeks, just to get everything away from you and make sure you're safe for a couple of seconds so you can reset those stacks. This is great at choke points to keep mobs at bay. There's all sorts of things you can do with Ring of Peace. It's a very fun ability, and I'm very glad it's still here. Now with that in mind, if you take Ring of Peace, you'll have both Ring of Peace and Leg Sweep now, as Leg Sweep is now baseline, which is a ton of AoE CC. So be sure you check out Ring of Peace a little more often than you might think. So level 75 row, this is our damage mitigation row. It's a very interesting row. Now you'll notice that Dampen Magic is no longer here. They've completely removed it. Which is fine, because honestly, with the way things have changed, Brewmaster doesn't really need it. Will we take more spell damage? For sure. But without it being here, we're still okay. So first we have Dampen Harm. This is the 2-minute cooldown. It reduces all damage you take by 20% to 50% for 10 seconds. Larger attacks will reduce more. So if you're getting hit by, say, the Scythe on Argus, and you pop Dampen Harm, guaranteed that's probably a 50% damage reduction, and that's pretty crazy, because most shield walls are 40. Dampen Harm is great when you know you're going to need that extra cooldown that your simple stagger will not cover. Healing Elixir is what I've been taking while I've been running around, just because Monk Self-Healing is kind of hit or miss. This is, again, purely for leveling. And drink a Healing Elixir, healing you for 15% of your maximum health, 2 charges on a 30-second recharge. Aside from leveling, this talent is not all that great. As far as magic mitigation goes, Dampen Harm is all damage, not just physical, so Dampen Harm works just as well on magic as it does on physical. So Healing Elixir, I believe, is honestly just your soloing talent, just so that you have a way to heal yourself for something. I'm using it again just for leveling. You probably won't use this in Raids or Mythic Plus, but it is here to help you out while you're soloing, which I think is really what it's for. So then we have Bob and Weave. This is essentially the legendary ring from Legion. It increases the duration of stagger by 3%. This looks incredibly underwhelming, and honestly at first glance it is. I thought the ring was pretty meh at best. However, whenever you extend the duration of stagger, you're spreading that damage out that much further. And believe it or not, that is a lot more effective health than you might give it credit for. For some really good math on this, I believe there is some information on exactly how much the ring provides over at the Peak of Serenity, which is a great monk resource. If it is not there, I'm sure someone in the Peak of Serenity Discord can help you find it. Level 90 row here, this is our AoE damage sort of row. We have special delivery here. Anytime you drink one of your 2 brews, Iron Skin or Purifying Brew, it has a 100% chance to toss a keg high in the air that lands nearby after 3 seconds, which will deal 814 damage to all enemies within 8 yards and reduce their movement speed by 50% for 15 seconds. Special delivery is definitely the choice if there's no one else in your party that can snare, and you absolutely need to snare things in Kite. Other than that, I do not believe Special Delivery beats out Rushing Jade Wind on damage. Rushing Jade Wind is a 5-second cooldown. It summons a whirling tornado around you, causing 1800 damage over 7.5 seconds to enemies within 8 yards. This does not cost you any resource whatsoever, it's just a buff you want to maintain while you're tanking. It does quite a bit of damage, and in large AoE situations, this does a ton of damage. It does not split the damage up. That's 1800 over 7.5 seconds to every enemy around you. It does not have an AoE cap either. So very, very powerful when you do not need that snare from Special Delivery. From what I have seen, the damage in general is close, except that Special Delivery is something that you have to actively use, and you may not need to drink brews all the time. So Rushing Jade Wind will typically be your go-to. Now lastly here we have Invoke Nizo, the Black Ox. Typically in Legion, this was used basically anytime you didn't need the AoE talents, because Nizo actually does quite a bit of damage. He's essentially a quick off-tank for you. It summons you, basically a Black Ox, to jump in, and he will attack your primary target and taunt it. He also frequently stomps, damaging all nearby enemies. He is actually a very powerful DPS cooldown, so if you're only going to have one target, you should probably go with Invoke Nizo. He's incredibly strong, and actually I used him in the Mage Tower to deal with High Lord Cruel and Inquisitor... Oh no, I think it's Inquisitor Varus, maybe? I think it's Inquisitor Varus. But Steve, as he's called in the community, Steve does a ton of damage, so anytime you have a single target, take Steve. Now the last row is our Mitigation row. This is our big change to our playstyle. So here we have High Tolerance. Stagger is 10% more effective at delaying damage, and you gain up to 15% haste based on your current level of Stagger. I haven't found many applications for High Tolerance except for whenever you're doing real heavy progression raiding, where you're going to be at constantly high Stagger and you'll have to purify. Haste is not Brewmaster's favorite stat by any means. There is a very small amount of haste in Legion that you needed. I believe it was 13 or 14% or somewhere in between. So this talent was basically only taken for that extra Stagger. It is, however, very, very good when you are pushing higher keys in Mythic Plus, things like that, where you're just going to be taking a ton of damage. However, with the addition of Guard to the row, which has been brought back from the dead, which I'm incredibly happy about, Guard is a 30-second cooldown. It guards against future attacks. This is no longer a complete absorb. What it does is it causes the next... it's actually a rather large amount of damage delayed by Stagger to instead be prevented. So essentially what this is that instead of popping your Purifying Brew to cleanse it off, you pop Guard, and it'll just prevent a bunch of that damage from ever actually hitting you after you've already mitigated it into your Stagger. Very useful if you're not going to be sitting constantly at red Stagger, where you may actually end up overcapping and dying. I can definitely see this being incredibly useful in raiding. Right now, in just like standard heroics and things like that, this actually isn't all that great because you're not taking that much damage because your damage intake is so smooth. But this will probably be the talent you take in raiding for sure. Blackout Combo is your DPS choice. Blackout Combo, whenever you go and you use your Blackout Strike, it will empower your next ability. In the case of Tiger Palm, it will increase its damage by 100%. For Breath of Fire, your cooldown on Breath of Fire is reduced by 3 seconds. With Keg Smash, it reduces the remaining cooldown on your brews by an additional 2 seconds. And then for Iron Skin Brew, it will pause your stagger for 3 seconds, so you won't take any ticks. There are some interesting tricks you can do with Iron Skin Brew with Blackout Combo. You know, to make sure that you essentially just don't take damage for 3 seconds if you're, say, the off tank on Mythic Agrimar. Pretty hilarious, I might say. Blackout Combo, though, at this point has fallen back a little bit in power because it isn't as strong because we are actually wanting to empower Breath of Fire now occasionally as well. However, Blackout Combo is very simple to play. It's basically you never use another ability until after you've Blackout Comboed, unless you absolutely need to. With this, it also prioritizes your Tiger Palm for single target damage, which pairs very well with Spitfire, which is why I'm taking it. And in general, it's just a really fun talent. I'm just very, very used to it at this point, so that's why we're running it. So those are the talents. Let's go ahead and take a peek at the spellbook to see what has changed. You'll notice we still have Blackout Strike, just simple physical damage. It generates a stack of Elusive Brawler, which is our mastery, which we'll get to shortly. Breath of Fire, 15-second cooldown now, of course does not get reset with Keg Smash with the chest piece anymore. You want to make sure you always use this after a Keg Smash, of course, because without Keg Smash being there, they won't burn for extra damage, and they also will not do reduced damage to you. Now, Breath of Fire will cause a little bit of fire damage up front, and then the debuff that they take, it's 450 fire damage over time, and they deal 5% reduced damage to you for 12 seconds. That is just a flat 5% reduced damage done to you that does affect spells. So this is actually pretty decent, actually, for extra mitigation. So it's very important you always make sure that whenever you hit with Breath of Fire, it's right after a Keg Smash. Chi Torpedo here is a talent, so we can skip that. We can skip Chi Wave because that is also a talent. Crackling Jade Lightning, typically not something we're going to use as a Brewmaster. It can be used to range pull a mob if you need to. Typically you would use Provoke instead, just because that mob's going to run to you quicker, and you'll also have some sort of threat on it. However, Crackling Jade Lightning is useful if you're, say, stuck out of range and you have nothing else you can do. Detox, make sure this is on a comfortable keybind. You will be using this a lot. Removes poison and disease effects from the target. You should definitely be trying to make sure you are cleansing yourself whenever possible, especially if you're running with a priest and there's a heavy poison like there are in several dungeons, or a disease and underrot where you get stunned for 30 seconds. If that goes on your healer, Detox is invaluable for making sure that they don't stand there for 30 seconds crying about how they can't cleanse themselves. Expel Harm, this is our essentially quick heal. We suck up all our healing spheres that we spawned, and you expel all that negative chi. You damage the nearest enemy for 10% of the amount that you heal. Expel Harm can hit quite hard, especially if you're at low HP, and you get a crit on it and you have a bunch of orbs. Expel Harm should definitely be something you're paying very, very close attention to, as this is one of our very few self-heal abilities. Fortifying Brew is our big cooldown. It does say 7-minute cooldown, but that is very misleading. Instant, it turns your stones to skin, your skin to stone, not stone to skins, that's weird. Turns your skin to stone for 15 seconds, increases your current and maximum health by 20%, increases the effectiveness of stagger by 10%, and also gives you 20% reduced damage intake. Exceedingly powerful cooldown. It does have a 7-minute CD, but it is reduced every time you Keg Smash. So make sure you're empowering those Keg Smashes. Healing Elixir is a talent, so we can skip that. Down to Iron Skin Brew, this is our basic mitigation. You should very easily be able to keep Iron Skin Brew up almost 100% of the time when you're fighting a boss. If you are not able to, you either need to get some more haste to bring the cooldown down a little bit further, or you need to time it better so that whenever you're without it, you either have some other CD up if you need it, you know, or you're already at full health so you don't have to worry about it. Iron Skin Brew is exceedingly important as it increases the stagger you can take for 7 seconds. It says substantially more stagger for 7 seconds, and it is not a joke. It is a ton more. So be sure you always have your Iron Skin brew up when you need it. Keg Smash is a 40 energy ability, 6.6 second recharge with the haste level that I have here. I believe it's a 7-second baseline. You smash a keg of brew on the target, dealing quite a bit of damage to all enemies within 8 yards, and you reduce their movement speed by 20% for 15 seconds. It reduces the remaining cooldown on your brews by 4 seconds. If you empower Keg Smash with Blackout Combo, it actually makes it 6 seconds, which is incredible considering that the duration of Iron Skin Brew is 7 seconds. So definitely something to pay attention to. With Keg Smash and Blackout Combo, you can basically keep up Iron Skin Brew all the time. Are you sensing a theme yet? So we have Leg Sweep here, 1 minute CD, instant, knocks down all enemies within 5 yards and stuns them for 3 seconds. That is down from 5 on live. Leg Sweep is invaluable whenever you need to make sure that something does not get a cast off and there's not an interrupt available, or whenever maybe you can't interrupt it but you can stun it. There's a lot of trash packs where Leg Sweep will save you and your group's life. So make sure this is in a very comfortable keybind, and make sure you use this as often as can. And be sure you coordinate with your group to make sure that you use your stuns effectively. So on page 2 here, we have Paralysis. This is our ranged CC. It is a 20-yard range. It incapacitates the target for 1 minute. Damage will cancel that effect. This is great whenever you have one mob that you need to make sure does not do something. You can also use it in combat to interrupt a spellcast if you have to. However, incapacitating a target will pull off all that Affliction Warlock's dots, and they will be very upset with you. Provoke is our taunt, 8-second cooldown, 30-yard range. It taunts the target and causes them to move towards you at a 50% increased speed. This ability can be targeted on your statue of the Black Ox, causing the same effect on all enemies within 10 yards of that statue. Super useful ability in general, but with the Black Ox statue, you can make sure you always have everything you need right on you. It's really cool to do an AoE taunt, where you're literally the only class that still has an AoE taunt.
Hello.
Then we have Purifying Brew. Purifying Brew clears 50% of your damage delayed with Stagger. This shares charges with Iron Skin Brew. You should only be using this if you are nearly capped on Stagger, because this is pretty wasteful most of the time. It's very rare you actually need to run a Purifying Brew, but when you do, you totally do. You will probably want to find a weak aura for Stagger if you plan on maining a Brewmaster. Also, Peak of Serenity yet again has a great one. Resuscitate returns the spirit to the body, restoring a dead target to life with 35% maximum health and mana, and it cannot be cast, of course, when in combat. This is just our standard single target res, nothing special here. Rushing Jade Wind is a talent, so we can skip that. Spear Hand Strike, 15-second cooldown interrupt. It just jabs the target in the throat. You ever wanted to throat punch somebody? This is your class. It prevents any spell from being cast from that school of magic for 4 seconds. It's very, very useful, of course, whenever that wonderful shaman is deciding to try to lava burst you. Yeah, forget your lava burst, buddy. You're gonna have to lightning bolt me instead. Summon Black Ox Statue is, of course, a talent. We're gonna swap over to Tiger Palm here. 25 energy, melee attack. Attack with the palm of your hand, dealing 605 damage, and reduces the remaining cooldown of your brews by 1 second. Tiger Palm is just our standard energy dump. Whenever you empower this with Blackout Combo, it's 100% extra damage, which is a fairly substantial number. Tiger Palm also procs Spitfire if you're taking that talent, so there's a lot riding on our standard energy dump, which is definitely something you should be using basically anytime you have the spare energy. Transcendence lets us drop essentially a Warlock Teleport on the ground, and then Transcendence Transfer will swap our body with the spirit we just dropped. Pretty cool, super useful in a lot of encounters, especially if you need to get somewhere specific all the time. We have lost Fuse and we've gained Vivify. Vivify casts a Surge of Invigorating Mist, healing the target for 4,000. Yep, that's Vivify. Nothing special there. Zen Flight, this is actually, I believe, from a glyph. It just lets you fly around on a cloud. Looks pretty cool, too. Zen Meditation, this is our very, very large CD that most monks forget that they even have. This reduces all damage taken by 60% for 8 seconds. Moving, being hit by a melee attack, or taking another action will cancel this. This is great whenever you need to mitigate something now, and it's one really, really big hit. If it's a melee attack. If it's spell damage, you can sit there and channel this thing for 8 seconds and just take no damage whatsoever. That also works, of course, on stagger damage. So if you are going to die because of things, you can pop Zen Med and save your life. Zen Pilgrimage will swap you over here to, at this point, it's now my home temple, which is the class hall at this point. Originally, it took you to the Peak of Serenity, which is in Pandaria. With Legion, we swapped to this wonderful, wonderful Turtle Island, which I very much enjoy. So our passives here, we have Brewmaster's Balance. This gives us an armor increase. Celestial Fortune, this is our main healing mechanic here. You have a chance equal to your critical strike chance to be healed for an additional 65% of the amount healed. The thing to keep in mind here is that crit is definitely our best stat by far. Celestial Fortune essentially doubles heals on us as well as our personal healing. So you definitely want to stack quite a bit of crit. It will be your most important stat, and it always will be with Celestial Fortune. Gift of the Ox. Whenever you take damage, you have a chance to summon a healing sphere visible only to you. Moving through that healing sphere heals you for 3421. I have a glyph on it, which just makes them green, which is the color of Yulon, as opposed to the yellow that they are standard. Our Mastery is Elusive Brawler. Each time you're hit by a melee attack or hit with a Blackout Strike, you gain stacking 25.8% increased dodge chance until your next successful dodge. This is a little different on live. It also works with Breath of Fire. You'll notice that on beta here, it only works for Blackout Strike or whenever you are hit with a melee attack. This essentially guarantees us some dodges, which is super important as we, don't have a shield, so we're always going to be taking damage. This also gives us an attack power increase. With the changes to tank threat, this is slightly more important than it was in Legion. However, Mastery is still a stat that you only want to get so high, just because after a certain point, you really don't need any more of it. We bring to any group Mystic Touch. Your damage will weaken the target, increasing physical damage taken by 5%. Invaluable if you're running a melee-heavy group, or if you're running a group with, say, any hunter and some melee, and, I don't know, a druid healer that wants to go ahead and catweave. It's just a little bit of extra damage, and it definitely helps. And then, of course, we have Stagger. This is what makes us actually work. You shrug off attacks, delaying a portion of physical damage based on your agility, instead taking it over 10 seconds. Affects magical attacks at 35% effectiveness. I believe at this point I stagger somewhere around 80% of the damage I would take because we are a leather tank. This all goes into the stagger pool, which is a percentage of your actual HP. For any more information on how stagger works, again, I recommend the Peak of Serenity. They are much better at explaining it than I am. So with that, my general thoughts on Brewmaster Monk and where they're going to be. In general, I think they're going to be a very powerful raid tank for sure. They always have been, and I believe they will continue to be that. In Mythic Plus, I think they're actually really going to shine this expansion as they bring a ton of different CC options and an extreme amount of mobility. With DKs losing Leech, this probably bumps them up a little bit in the Mythic Plus department, but they also do have a couple of issues here and there, but it's nothing that can't be worked around. There's plenty of very, very high clearing Mythic Plus tanks that are monks, and they will definitely continue to be a strong contender if you're looking to run Mythic Plus with your friends, as long as you enjoy the playstyle. So with that, I wanted to thank you guys for watching today. If you liked the video, give it a like. If you didn't, downvote it, that's fine. If you haven't subbed already, go ahead and sub. Help me get, next goal here is 1,000 subs. That's where we're working towards. We're hoping to get there, hopefully, soon. It'd be cool. I'm really excited. It's been a wonderful bit of growth here during beta. So with that, guys, thank you so much for watching here. I will be doing more regular live streams very soon. I just got some software set up, and I am ready to go. So keep an eye on the channel. You will see some notifications popping up. Have a great one.